In medieval Europe, surviving winter wasn't just difficult, it was a race against math, time, and ruin. A family needed up to 2,000 pounds of grain, but 30% spoiled, and rats devoured another 1/5 before snow even fell. If you didn't master the pantry secrets by November, spring could mean starvation. So what did survival truly cost? A medieval family's survival depended on arithmetic as much as on weather or luck. Each household, usually 4 or 5 people, needed between 1,200 and 2,000 pounds of grain to last through the winter. That number was not a guess. It came from manorial account rolls, tallying what was owed, stored, and lost. But no matter how carefully grain was harvested and hidden away, the losses started almost immediately. Damp air crept in through thatch and stone, turning sacks of barley or rye into breeding grounds for mold. About 30% of all stored grain spoiled this way every year. The math grew harsher when rodents entered the picture. Rats and mice, drawn by the scent of grain, chewed through sacks, gnawed at wooden bins, and slipped into pits. On average, they consumed another 1/5 of a household's stores before the first frost arrived. In raw numbers, a family that started with 2,000 pounds might open their bins in January to find just 1,120 pounds left, enough for only the most careful rationing. Every year, the cycle repeated: gather, store, and hope that rot and rodents took less than their usual share. The struggle was not just against the cold, but against a silent, relentless drain that began the moment the harvest ended. By late summer, the calendar became a countdown. The Feast of the Assumption on August 15th signaled the start of the harvest window, and every day after that was measured in what could be gathered, dried, or salted before the cold set in. There was no room for delay. Fields had to be cleared, grain threshed, and animals fattened on the scraps left behind. As November approached, the pressure mounted. The weeks after All Saints' Day were known as Blood Month, a time when nearly every household faced the same grim task, slaughtering livestock before the deep freeze. Pigs, in particular, were the backbone of winter meat. A single animal could provide 150 pounds of meat, but only if it was processed in time. Most of it, up to 70%, had to be preserved, usually with salt or smoke, to last through the months when fresh food was out of reach. The timing was unforgiving. Animals slaughtered too early wasted precious fattening days, and animals slaughtered too late could not be butchered because of frost. Those who missed the window risked facing the hunger gap with nothing but dwindling stores. The race to fill the pantry was a test of discipline and endurance. Every hour lost to rain, early frost, or a broken tool could mean a winter with less on the table. As the last pigs were hung in the smokehouse and the final barrels sealed, families measured their odds not in hope, but in pounds of meat and sacks of grain, knowing that what was done could not be undone until spring returned. Food storage in medieval villages relied on a patchwork of hidden defenses. Grain rarely sat in a tidy pantry. Instead, families dug cellars beneath earthen floors or lined pits with barrels, called bin stubs, to keep out moisture and slow decay. Above ground, granaries perched on staddle stones, their mushroom-shaped bases designed to outwit rats and mice. Thatched roofs shielded the grain from rain, and the raised platforms made climbing nearly impossible for rodents. In some villages, recent LiDAR scans have uncovered entire networks of communal pits carved beneath the ground and shared by neighbors. These pits, mapped by archaeologists in Norfolk, show how storage was not just a private struggle, but a collective one. Every layer of earth, every stone, was part of a quiet battle to keep hunger at bay until spring returned. Salt was the silent guardian of the medieval pantry. Without it, The work of autumn, harvesting, slaughtering, storing, could unravel in days. The form of Curie, a cookbook from 1390, put it plainly. Salt above all other things is needful. It preserves flesh and fish from corruption. In Yorkshire, manorial records show that preserving just 20 pounds of pork demanded a full gallon of salt. This was not a pinch or a scattering. It was a thick, gritty shield, packed tightly around every joint of meat. London's Guild of Butchers, founded in 1172, regulated the city's winter salt supply with the same vigilance as coin or grain. Even a small misstep, such as too little salt or a damp barrel, meant rot would set in before December. Modern microbiologists warn that the margin for error was razor thin. Salt was precious, but for winter survival, it was non-negotiable. Root vegetables offered a lifeline when other supplies ran thin. Carrots and beets were packed in damp sand or layered with clean straw, following advice found in the Taquinum Sanitatis, a medieval health manual that detailed how humidity kept roots edible for months. These cellars and pits protected more than just calories. They held the only reliable source of vitamins through the darkest part of winter. For most peasants, the daily meal was built around what could be stored underground. By January, as much as 85% of the diet came from grains and roots. Protein fell below 10%, and the effects were written in bone. Archaeologists studying skeletons from St. Mary Spital in London found lesions linked to rickets and scurvy, clear signs of vitamin D and vitamin C deficiency, after months of only stored bread, porridge, and roots. The medieval pantry was a shield, but never a perfect one. In 1315, rain fell for months on end. Grain fields drowned, and by harvest's end, 3 out of every 4 crops had failed across northern Europe. Wheat, once a daily staple, became a luxury almost overnight. The price of a bushel jumped from 4 pence to 12 pence, an increase so steep that even those with steady work could barely afford a loaf. For most peasants, food had already consumed nearly 80% of their income before the famine. Now families traded what little they owned just to buy moldy grain or a handful of beans. The Anonymala Chronicle records, "The poor ate bran, chaff, acorns, and bitter herbs. Many died in the ditches. Meals shrank to gritty porridge and wild greens." The hunger that followed made the medieval pantry's limits painfully clear. No amount of careful storage could fill empty fields. Desperation in the medieval pantry sparked a wave of creative, sometimes risky experiments. In Scandinavia, slabs of butter were buried deep in peat bogs, where the tannins and the cool, airless mud could keep them edible for years. Archaeologists still unearth ancient bog butter to this day. Eggs, a rare luxury in winter, were packed in lime water or salted bran by those who could afford it. Honey served a double purpose, preserving fruits and acting as a wound dressing when supplies ran low. Even ice harvested from rivers in December was packed into underground ice houses. Cambridge records show these chambers stayed below 4 degrees Celsius well into spring, making them a precious tool for anyone wealthy enough to build and fill one. Each method offered hope, but none guaranteed safety, and sometimes the line between preservation and disaster was thin. Wealth drew a sharp line through the medieval winter. In manor houses, stone-walled cellars sheltered barrels of imported wine, dried fruits, and spices, while peasants crouched over floor pits packed with little more than salted pork and root vegetables. The difference was more than comfort. It was survival. Grain for the poor was stored in rough bins or communal pits where damp and rats took their share. In contrast, manor cellars were kept dry and guarded. their stores turned and inspected with regularity. Manuals from the mid-1400s insisted that people turn the barley every month, a rule rarely followed outside the estates. In 1381, as food prices soared and unrest spread, Richard II issued England's first official cap on the price of grain and salt. Yet for most, policy offered little relief. The real divide remained underground, between those who had stone vaults and those who dug in dirt. Today, global food security still depends on the fragile balance of storage, supply, and luck, just as it did centuries ago. As climate shocks and supply chains strain, history reminds us that survival is not guaranteed. It must be managed. Sometimes the only difference is what is left in the pantry. Thanks for watching.